Hey guys, Gracie here. This is how to practice playing in tune. Right now I'm working on Scherzo by Daniel Van Goens, and the way he wrote this piece is an ABA format. The B section of the piece is a cantando section, meaning singing. The markings that are written on the top of the page are cantando and dolce gracioso, which means sweetly and gracefully. So one of the mistakes that I see a lot of people make with this piece is that when they come to this section, they don't play it in tune. Why? Because their vibrato, they think that their vibrato is going to mask any notes that are out of tune and just barely noticeable. That is not okay. Same thing with glissando. People think that they can just kind of glissando around until they find the right note. No, no, no again. Never do it. Why? Because it makes your audience just make this face, and it's never a good face to see. Because the note's not quite there. It either needs to be a hair sharp, hair flat. It's just not there. So the way I practice this section, and this goes for any piece that is extremely expressive, is without vibrato. The reason I do it without vibrato is so that the bass note that I spend most of my time on is always in tune. Because if you're slightly sharp and you're kind of rocking back and forth on that vibrato to find the right note, it's just not there. You're not going to get to it because you don't give your ear enough time to figure out what the right note is. So the way I practice this is the first note of this section is a B. I have an open string D, and D up to B is a perfect sixth, which is pretty easy to hear in the D major. Did I just say perfect sixth? I am so sorry. Major sixth. It's very easy to hear in the scale. So I play the open D. What I do is I kind of roll my finger around in a extremely slow motion vibrato until I find the right pitch, and then I kind of rock the finger back. I do not slide it back. I rock my finger back so that the pad of my finger ends up being on the correct note. That way, when I go to vibrato, it's not out of tune. I spend most of my time on the in-tune note, like this. Most of my time on that note was spent a little on the sharp side because my finger slipped as I go, so here I go again. Most of my time was spent on the correct note that time. You can go through sections, entire measures of this piece, just doing open string practice work. And open strings are probably the best way to tune because your open strings cannot be changed in the middle of a piece, unless you've got some really weird piece, but that's an extenuating circumstance. Another issue with this piece is that there's a lot of large shifts up and down the fingerboard, such as in this section. Even that was still not as in tune as I would have liked for it to be. So what I'm going to do is use a glissando, a very slow glissando, to figure out exactly where that note is. It's a B. The jump is from an E to a B. And make sure that it is in tune, because the glissando allows your ear to adjust with enough time to figure out, okay, is this in tune, is this too sharp, is it too flat, am I going to overshoot? And the goal of this is not to overshoot, because it's easier to slide up to a note just a little bit farther than it is to come back. Believe me, I've learned the hard way. I'm not sure why that is, but muscle memory is weird like that. Perfect B. Not out of tune. My finger's right there is a very slow glissando, but after doing this many, many times, you end up with that, which was mostly in tune. And you can always check that with other open strings. I might use a harmonic just because that's the closest thing I have, and it's an octave up, which allows me to hear better. It's the same way coming down. always check your final note, because that's the one that the audience listens for. That's where the phrase moves. So, these are some tips on how to play in tune. Hope you enjoyed and hope they help.